Who's going to run against Barack Obama in 2012? Well, the Republican who has raised the most money to do so far appears to be Mitt Romney. Through his PACs, he has raised $1.8 million as of the second quarter of this year, in second and third place are Sarah Palin and Minnesota Governor Tim Sorry? Just got sleepy there for a moment. Don't know what happened. Whenever I start to say it's very embarrassing. Anyway, right, Mitt Romney. When Mitt Romney ran for the Republican presidential nomination last time, his electoral strategy was awkward. Remember his leaked campaign playbook with the Romney campaign bumper sticker idea? First, not France. Not only does that not make for a good political campaign slogan, it doesn't even make sense. What is first, and why isn't it France? And is anybody confusing first with France? Is this a problem that only President Mitt Romney can solve? Then Mitt Romney also tried running as the far right-wing conservative candidate right after his last gig as governor of Massachusetts, a state that, while he was in office, legalized gay marriage and instituted universal health care. But now Mitt Romney 2012 is a whole new bag of tricks, and this time he's running as the guy who is against reducing the number of nuclear weapons in the world. Josh Rogan at Foreign Policy's The Cable blog reports this week that Mitt Romney is raising money now off of his "Yay, more nuclear weapons" position. Send me money so I can fight the president for more nuclear weapons. Thousands are not enough. There are other worlds we might need to destroy too. The Obama administration, perhaps unafraid of a Mitt Romney challenge, today made public the specifics of its nuclear reduction plan, a 30% reduction in long-range nuclear warheads and more money to maintain the ones we are holding on to. That still leaves us with 3,000 weapons, many on hair-trigger alert. What could possibly go wrong?
In 1995, Pete Sampras won the U.S. Open and Wimbledon. George Clooney made his first big movie. A bomb destroyed the federal building in Oklahoma City. O.J. Simpson was acquitted of murder, and we also came close to an accidental nuclear missile launch.
On January 25th, 1995, the United States launched a rocket from Norway to study the Northern Lights. We told the Russians that we were going to launch that rocket, but somebody in Moscow forgot to pass word on it.
That fit exactly the characteristics of the beginning of a nuclear strike. One missile coming over, exploding in the atmosphere, sending out an electromagnetic pulse that would fry all the electronics, radars, surveillance, computers in the country to be attacked, followed by an onslaught of nuclear weapons. And for the first time in the nuclear age, the Russians actually opened up the nuclear football. They went to President Yeltsin, they opened up the command and control launch codes, the button, put it on the desk, and said, "We're under attack." Fortunately, Yeltsin wasn't drunk, and he didn't believe what the military was telling him. He said there must be some mistake.
That clip was from the new documentary Countdown to Zero, which makes a really strong case against countries, including ours, having nuclear weapons. It also makes a really good case that being against nuclear weapons isn't just for hippies anymore. Take a look at who appears in this film as supporting the notion of a nuclear-free world. Yes, Jimmy Carter, but also the late Robert McNamara, F.W. de Klerk, Richard Burt, Pervez Musharraf, Tony Blair, Mikhail Gorbachev, Richard Cizik, Tom D'Agostino, James Baker III, and the late Ronald Reagan from when he was president. Joining us now is Lawrence Bender, the producer of Countdown to Zero. Mr. Bender, thank you for being here tonight.
So great to be here.
You talked to Mikhail Gorbachev in the film. For all his regrets about not being able to reduce nukes more with Ronald Reagan, he seems optimistic about President Obama's agenda. Do you feel the same way?
Optimistic?
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I do. I feel like this is an idea whose time has come. And it's one of these things where this is not a liberal idea anymore.
Yeah.
And as you said, Ronald Reagan started this whole thing with the START Treaty. And the START Treaty that's going to be hopefully ratified in the Senate is something that's supported by a lot of Republicans. And I feel like post-Cold War, post-9/11, people are starting to change the way they think about nuclear weapons. For instance, Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, Sam Nunn, and Bill Perry wrote an op-ed article in 2007 and in 2008 kind of starting this whole thing, talking about why the reduction of nuclear weapons are important post 9/11. That is not Russia and the United States that the main threat's going to be, but from a terrorist, potentially. And so people like that, people like Secretary Baker, who's in our movie, and maybe if Mitt Romney saw our movie, he'd feel the same way.
If he did, he still wouldn't campaign on it. Remember, he's first, not France. He's inexplicable. If the U.S. and Russia went to zero, right? You make the case the U.S. and Russia have 96% of the world's nuclear weapons.
Right.
If the U.S. and Russia went to zero, why would that make it more likely for countries like North Korea or Iran to give up on the nuclear dream as well?
That's a great question, and we talk about this in the movie too. And it's not that. It would be naive to say, well, if we reduce, then Iran's not going to want a nuclear weapon. No one wants to be naive about it. But I think the idea is, and by the way, the Global Zero has a commission of 25 military leaders and political leaders that are backed by quite a few people, former heads of states, national military commanders, and so forth. The idea is that if the United States and Russia, who own most of the nuclear weapons of the world, they need to take the leadership and reduce. And as they begin to reduce and get to low enough numbers, that the other countries are going to feel pressure to start reducing. And as we start to create a circular downward spiral of nuclear weapons, then there's going to be pressure, more pressure, and less tolerance for countries like Iran to either get it or North Korea to have it. And so the pressure will become a downward pressure as opposed to the Cold War, where it was an upward cycle.
And it's a good point, made almost parenthetically, that this is sort of what happened with chemical weapons. At some point, chemical weapons became taboo. It doesn't mean that they were wiped off the face of the earth, but they became unacceptable.
Exactly. And in the Global Zero concept, basically, is the only way to get rid of the nuclear threat, 100% get rid of it, is to secure and lock all the nuclear materials around the world, which the president, his summit was about a couple months ago in D.C., and to get rid of all the nuclear weapons internationally, worldwide. And only then can there be a true, the threat of terrorism, nuclear terrorism, is going to be, diminished.
One of the things described in the film is at a closed session in the Senate, Joe Biden, now the vice president, essentially gets a nuclear weapon, minus the nuclear material, minus the uranium or plutonium, gets it delivered to the Senate hearing room. Can you just explain that?
It's a scary concept. But they were doing Senate hearings, and he was like, okay, I don't believe it. Prove it. And they literally went off. It's something that certain colleges do in their graduate programs, is they ask them to build a nuclear bomb based on what they find on the internet. And lo and behold,
all commercially available components.
All commercially available components. And they did it. They built it, minus the fissile material, of course, and brought it into the Senate. And I think at that point, everyone goes, okay, this is a problem.
Yeah. It's an incredible story and an incredible issue, and you've done a really good job, I think, lighting a fire under a lot of people on this. So thanks. Really good to meet you.
My
Thanks
pleasure.
for doing
Thanks
it.
to meet you.
Lawrence Bender is, of course, producer of Countdown to Zero. If you have the opportunity to see it anywhere, you really should, even if it's just for the Joe Biden anecdote.